Welcome to the Ambitious Bookkeeper channel. In today's episode, I'm going to chat about threads, whether it is worth spending time on as a bookkeeper or if it's not worth your time. So stay tuned and listen in if you're interested in hearing about how to utilize threads. Hey, and welcome to the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm Serena Shoup, CPA, a mom of three, and I've been running a virtual bookkeeping business from my home since 2017. You are in the right place if you are a bookkeeper, accountant, or an accounting student, and you believe and know in your heart that your purpose is bigger than sitting in a cubicle. If you're ready to learn some actionable tips and strategies for starting and growing your accounting business, then I hope you stick around. Okay, so Threads is a new-ish platform. It's owned by Instagram. It came out over a year ago, I think. And when it came out, I started an account and then I immediately got really overwhelmed with all the channels of everything. And I was like, I'm not going to use this. So I just deleted it off my phone and didn't touch it for an entire year. Well, when they created the Threads platform, they made it really easy to, like, when you created your account, you could just automatically follow everyone that you're already following on Instagram. And so by that feature, I already had quite a few followers. I don't know if I documented how many I had at that point. I don't think I did. But I re-downloaded Threads a few months ago, around June 2024, depending on when you're watching this video. This is airing in October 2024. So I re-downloaded it in June and posted my first thread on June 5th, as you can see here. I just basically used Threads as just a place to put thoughts that didn't really fit into a social media post, which I don't do my own social media anymore. So I'm not the one doing our regular posts, except I do handle the Life Lately ones. So I posted that first thread, and then by August 27th, I had 1,000 followers. So a lot of your followers will automatically come from Instagram, like I said before. So if you've done the work to build an audience there, a lot of it comes across. Although my Instagram is almost 7,000 followers and Threads is only 1,000, but I'm going to get into the more important piece of how Threads works is not really on the followers, it's the algorithm right now, at least. So from using Threads from June to August, so June, July, August, 3 months, right? Just 3 months. I was able to get 6 external podcast interviews, meaning I was a guest on 6 other podcasts, 5 and counting interviews scheduled for my own podcast, 1 guest workshop, and a client directly from me just liking one of her posts and then her looking at my profile and going down the rabbit hole. So my strategy that I'm sharing today is basically this. Engage authentically. So I wasn't posting a lot of threads. I was just posting here and there, maybe once a week, but more so I'm engaging on threads. So I'm reading through others' posts, I'm commenting. And when you comment on other people's posts, it feeds it to other people's algorithm. And then the reach just becomes far and wide, which is how Facebook used to work at the very beginning. And sometimes LinkedIn works that way as well. And then I follow certain hashtags or threads. And one of the ones that I'm following is podcast threads, because that's what I'm using threads as for a strategy, is to source guests and to become a guest on other podcasts. So I encourage you to think of how you want to use threads and follow those hashtags so that you are being fed things from that topic and you can interact with it. And then since I'm following those threads, I'm commenting when people post threads on calls for speakers or for podcast interviews, or they want to be on someone's podcast. I will do a little work on looking to see what their stuff is about, and if maybe I would be a good guest on their podcast, or vice versa, if they would be a good guest for my podcast. I do my research and then I comment and I follow up. So that's the other piece, is following up. So you'll notice if you start commenting on someone's call for speakers for their podcast, like they want a guest on their podcast, you'll notice tons and tons of other people are commenting. Well, I had a chat with someone that I ended up on their podcast through this process, and she was saying, yeah, I had tons of interest on that thread that I posted, but not very many people actually followed up. So I was kind of in the top running for guesting on her podcast because out of the 30 plus people that commented, maybe 5 or so actually followed up in the DMs on Instagram and said, hey, I commented on your post. Here's all the things that I could talk about on your podcast, and basically repitched themselves. So you have to do that extra work to show that you actually want to be on their podcast instead of just being like, hi, I'm a bookkeeper. I can talk about this. Do the follow up. And then my last tip in strategy is to just have fun with it. Is to not get all like worked up on like the algorithm and like, is it working? If you don't actually have fun, this goes for any platform. If you don't actually have fun over there, then it's not going to work for you. It might work temporarily, but you're either going to get burned out or it's just not going to be fun and you're not going to want to keep following up. So that's my strategy for Threads. And then I have some tips for managing your time on Threads as well. Like setting timers. There's actually a way in the settings in Threads where you can have it tell you, oh, hey, you've been on here for 15 minutes. Do you want to take a break? So I have that turned on. And that was really helpful because it's really easy to go down the rabbit hole on Threads. That algorithm just pinpoints you immediately. So I set that timer and I log off whenever I get that 15 minutes. Just to put it into context, my other social media, like I pulled up in August, whenever I was putting the outline together for this podcast episode. This is how long I've been promising this. I'm sorry, guys. I took a screenshot of my weekly screen time on my iPhone, and this is really embarrassing. I'm just going to put it up on the screen right here. Instagram was 10 hours that week, although I will say I do a lot of chatting back and forth on business stuff with potential customers and clients and students. But I'm going to admit here that a lot of that is actually personal time. I do a lot of like scrolling through reels and sending memes to friends. And then LinkedIn, I spent 2 hours, almost 3 hours that week. There's some times that I haven't logged into LinkedIn since that time probably. And then Threads, I spent 2.5 hours on. So to put it into context, like the return on your time investment, if I only spent 2.5 hours a week on Threads, but I got all of these podcast interviews that widen your reach even more, reach different audiences. These people aren't on Threads. I talk about things on podcasts that I'm not talking about on Threads. Like, it's worth the investment if you stay focused and utilize it. And my other tip is to maybe post things on Threads that are a little bit like questions or maybe controversial, like your hot take on certain things. And then on the ones that I'm like really proud of, I'll share them on Instagram. So that will get more people over to Threads following you. But yeah, so that's how I've used Threads. And since this boom in podcast interviews, it actually enabled me to batch out almost the rest of the year of podcasts on my podcast, on the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast here. And that feels really cool. Although I will say there was a time frame where I was like, oh my gosh, I must have been so ambitious booking all of this stuff because now all of these appointments are on my calendar. And I'm not going to lie, I rescheduled a couple of them because I was like, this is just too much. So keep that in mind. If you are the same type where you're like doing a lot of outreach when you're like really energetic, and then later on scheduling those interviews, or they're on your calendar during a time when you know you're not going to be more energetic, like us women, we have cycles and there's peaks and valleys of our energy levels. And so be mindful of that when you're scheduling. If you utilize this strategy and schedule podcast interviews, be mindful of the times that you're selecting to be on someone's podcast, and hopefully the energy matches. So thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you liked this episode, rate and review the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. I am trying to put out more YouTube content this year, or this next year probably is what's really going to happen. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you to everyone who helps make this podcast possible. Content and interviews are produced by me, Serena Shu. Our intro and outro music is written and performed by my brother, Ian Gilliam. Editing is also by Ian using his awesome sound engineering skills along with Descript software. Hosting and publishing is by Buzzsprout, and you can check out the show notes for links to all of these amazing resources and resources mentioned in the episode.
Be ambitious.